wrestling is fake in a way that they don't hit each other, but when they're in that exact moment, is it improvised? Or are the things that they're doing is rehearsed? Because the way that Zac Efron reacted, the way that the dad reacted to Zac Efron's performances, it seemed like it was genuine. I was like, yo, why did you do that? Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back. The Eye of the Storm podcast. Podcast? Are we a podcast? Or are we just a group of guys review movies?
We're on YouTube.
Well, we're back again, guys. I'm here with my boys Hervey and Daniel.
Yo.
And today, before we even get into it, guys, what's the best recent thing you watched?
So the guy that doesn't watch horror movies decided to watch a horror movie recently. And that was just because obviously the new A Quiet Place is coming out in cinema. I think it's A Quiet Place Day 1. So I haven't seen the first two that have come out. So I thought, let me check it out. Let me see what it's about. And as a basic premise, basically the world's been invaded by these aliens. They can't see, but they're attracted to sound. And if you make a sound, they will come and kill you, basically. I did only watch half of it because I did fall asleep. But what I did watch, I actually really thoroughly enjoyed, to be honest. It was actually I think the premise behind it was really good. Obviously, we're following this one family where you've got that wife, husband, and the kids and stuff like that. I was shocked. I don't know if this is a spoiler. I was shocked at the start when they killed the kid because I didn't expect that. Because in movies, they kind of play around with it and they don't really kill kids. So for the kid to die at the start of the movie, I was like, okay, we're in a serious movie right here.
Aquaman 2 was held back by that problem.
By not killing the kid.
That was so dark.
Yeah, no, from what I watched so far, I actually really enjoyed it. I think the premise behind it was quite interesting. Obviously, you've got this woman in a world where you can't make sound. You've got a woman that's pregnant. So it's a bit of a ticking time bomb. This baby that's inside her that's eventually going to come out and not know the rules of the world where you can't make noise. So it's just interesting to see how they deal with that. Again, I'm only halfway through, but it was a great watch and I can't wait to sort of finish watching that.
So as somebody who's not used to those kinds of movies, did the premise seem gimmicky to you?
No, not really.
A year before that, I think there was Bird Box, which was you can't look at the monsters, otherwise they kill you. And I think looking at it from the outside, if you don't watch a lot of these, they can seem like randomly generated plots. I think they came out very closely. I'm not sure which one came first. It's like a gimmick plot, kind of. Mm-hmm. So I think I agree that it's very well done. I'm just curious how the premise came across or what your expectations were.
The premise of having monsters that can't see but can hear everything and can maybe hear from like miles and miles away. It did seem a bit far-fetched, to be honest. But, sometimes, or like what I try to do in movies is go in and just try to suspend my belief a little bit and just try to believe what they're trying to sell to me. I try to ignore where there's like maybe potential like conflicts or anything like that.
I mean, it's not a movie's job to make you convinced that it's real. It's supposed to make you not care that it's not real.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it did that. I think it made me care that it's not real, just because I was like very invested in the story behind it.
Glad you're finally joining the horror.
I'm getting there.
You're getting there, man. You're getting there. That's good. Good news.
So I had a hard time with this week. I kept trying to watch stuff and nothing really stuck. I gave Dark a third try, which is basically, it's often described as the German Stranger Things, and that it's science fiction set in the 80s, and it's got a similar feel and aesthetic. And I'm told it has this really intricate story with amazing characters, and it all pays off in the end, and I just can't get through the first episode.
Honestly, same.
Like 10 minutes in, I'm reminded of my reasons for emigrating. It's ridiculous. I feel like I will have to push through it one day and maybe in episode 3 it gets good or something. But I keep trying and keep failing. But the best thing I watched this week was Suitable Flesh, which is a horror movie that came out last year and just came out on Blu-ray and streaming. It's basically the idea of a therapist gets a new patient who seems to have multiple personalities, but that guy is being stalked by a sorcerer who can swap bodies. And he basically, for centuries probably, has been jumping from one body to the next, just taking over people's lives. Basically, her patient is that person, and then a plot unfolds from that. And it's really good. It's like this thriller that feels like it was made in the 90s, but in all the best ways. It's based on a short story by H.P. Lovecraft, and it's one of those adaptations that changes all the details but keeps the core spirit intact. So the first sentence of the original short story is, I confess that I shot my friend, but I'm not the one who killed him. It's that kind of story. And it's basically about like body swapping and people not being in their own bodies, and you don't know who they are exactly until it's too late and something. It's really good. I'm glad I watched it, and I hope they make more like it. And I'm honestly amazed it got made, because it feels so out of place. We always talk about movies like Venom feeling like they were made 20 years ago and just locked in a vault somewhere, and Madam Web has the same reputation, and this is one that's kind of like that, but it somehow works. It doesn't feel outdated or old-fashioned, even though it's very much inspired by 20-year-old things.
What was it called again?
Suitable Flesh.
Suitable Flesh, and that's on Netflix.
No, it's on Shudder. I think I got it on Blu-ray for my collection. Highly recommend it.
Thank you guys for your recommendation. Well, what did I watch? I didn't watch a damn thing because I couldn't find nothing. What I will be watching, and it might be the best recent thing that I've seen that will be mentioned next week, is Deadpool. Because actually, I watched it, but I don't remember it. I watched it so long ago. So it will be quite refreshing.
Just make sure to watch it with your parents.
Hell no. After seeing the trailer, the recent trailer Ryan Reynolds dropped, hell no. Like first 10 seconds, he's talking about pegging. I'm like, oh no. Oh my God. I can't believe Disney actually dropped this.
They knew what they were getting into with the first two.
And to be fair, it could save them. So if this movie is as good as everyone's making it seem like it's going to be, hey man, Disney have been given another a lifeline.
The Iron Claw, Jonathan, what was your opinion?
An emotional story filled with innocence and bad luck. Literally, guys. If you wanted a synopsis, that is it. I was going to say it was amazing. And I think, okay, it was amazing, but not because of the movie in itself. I feel like it was the performance and the chemistry between the actors, what made the film amazing. I think it's very hard to judge and critique biopic movies because it's a biopic. But, I think with this one, the accuracy and the performances is what you can kind of like critique on. Other stuff is like, you can't really critique on it because it's actually based on a true story. But this was a really good movie. It was sad. It was sad. I was definitely shocked by what I was seeing, like the revelations of what these wrestlers went through and just like the upbringing. And I was like, damn, like it kind of made me wonder, is this how like fathers back in the day that were kind of going for like the American dream, you know what I'm saying? And were the mothers like this as well? Like it was making me ask questions, and I wanted to kind of do like research too. So it was enlightening. It was definitely enlightening, and it was a sad film, man. It was a sad film, but it ended quite gracefully, especially with the post credit. Well, not post credit, but like when the credit scenes started coming on in the pictures, and obviously what was being shown. I was like, okay, thankfully it ended like that because, bro, my heart was like, damn, I feel it for these people. But the performances, honestly, was amazing, especially Zac Efron, bro. You just used to be that High School Musical brother, and now you are like, I would be surprised if you don't win like an award for your performance. Yeah, he definitely had a highlight performance. But yeah, guys, the movie is definitely worth the watch. Definitely bring tissues as well. Yeah, that's my fault.
No, I agree. I think this is a very, very well-made movie. Going into it, not knowing the backstory, not knowing the history of this von Erich family, it wasn't the movie I was expecting, to be honest. Like I didn't know what I was, walking into. And obviously, like you said, a lot of all of the performances from all of the actors make you feel the weight and the emotions behind everything in this movie. And I feel like, what a really good biopic does is it makes you want to know more. It makes you want to go away and do your own research and dig a little bit deeper into the story behind it. And I think what a good biopic also does is it makes you kind of reflect and kind of, obviously, like you mentioned about, the father and the mother and stuff like that. It just makes you reflect as to, life itself and like, the rights and the wrongs and stuff like that. And like why people like try to understand the character and try to pick up the flaws and stuff like that. And just like reflect on your own self and your own life and your own decisions that you're making and stuff like that. And like, what you value and stuff like that. And I just feel it was an amazing movie. It was a very, very good watch.
Sorry, just one last thing to add in as well before we get to you, Daniel. I'm so sorry. I'm so glad this was produced by A24. Is it A24? A24. I'm so glad it was produced by them because with A24 movies, the cinematic feel and look that they give is just nostalgia. I don't know how to explain it, but that look that they kind of give you, that, creamy, grainy, like a VHS mixed with a red cam all in one. It's just the look that they gave was so right for this film. And it was you could tell it was an A24 movie. You know what I'm saying? So well done, A24, once again. Well done. Sorry, Daniel.
So this movie had an uphill battle with me. So it's a biopic, it's a sports movie, it's about wrestling. Those are all things I don't care about. The only sports movie I've ever enjoyed is Pacific Rim, which has the story of a sports movie, the structure of a sports movie, obviously in a very different context. But generally, I just don't care about those kinds of movies, and I wouldn't have seen the movie if it wasn't for this channel. But I'm glad I did. Everything you two have said is correct. The performances, the feel of the story, everything just works. I would just say the first half of the movie, the movie is kind of split into two halves. And in the first half, it kind of confirmed every preconceived notion I have about biopic movies and sports movies, which is that it kind of drags out and there's lots of montages and it's kind of one thing after another, but not much happening in that sense. But that's all set up for the second half. And the second half is nonstop emotional gut punches and kicks to the head as because it's wrestling, and it's really good. I really cared for these characters in the end, and I have very few complaints about it.
Well, talking about complaints, seeing as we have given this film high praises, what are the dislikes about this movie that you just didn't like so much? Because you've kind of touched upon it, Daniel, said the montages, how it dragged. But yeah, what are dislikes that we dislikes about film? I can go first if you want me to. Or it looks like you wanted to say something.
No, I have one. Again, it's whether it's sort of kind of right or wrong for the movie itself. But I just felt like some of the like wrestling scenes and some of the in-ring stuff wasn't really that compelling. And of course, you're not really there for that. But of course, if you're going to present it, I felt that could have been done in a little bit more of an interesting way. I just felt like you didn't really kind of feel the presence of like them being in the ring and then being sort of serious wrestlers. It kind of felt like it was a little bit of an afterthought in the movie, which of course when you're telling such an emotional story, I can understand it and I can forgive it. So it's not too much of a big deal for me, but that's one thing which I didn't really rock with.
Well, for me, because as this is a biopic, I was expecting to see the full truth, and I feel like I didn't. There was an unanswered question about wrestling. Is wrestling real? Now, of course, for the wrestling fans out there, calm down for what I'm about to say. Wrestling is not real. But this movie didn't reveal that. Now, they did, of course, you can see that they don't hit each other. Like, it's very theatrical, right? So in its action in itself, it was like, okay, cool. Like, this clearly isn't real. And then obviously when Zac Efron and his future baby mama went on a dinner date, spoiler, guys, when they went on the dinner date, she asked the question, is it real? And obviously Zac Efron didn't really he answered the question, but didn't answer the question at the same time. But the reason why I felt like it was an unanswered question, it was because at times, especially when Zac faced Ric Flair, then the first championship fight he had where he was on the ground for too long, when he was on the ground for too long, and obviously he didn't end up getting a championship fight, this was kind of giving me a mixed message. It was like, okay, so I know they don't physically hit each other, but is it a thing where with wrestling, is it improv or is it rehearsed? Because the outcomes of those fights, the father was disappointed. He was like, why did you take so long? Or even with his fight against Ric Flair, he said, why did you react like that? So basically, it was telling me that wrestling is fake in the way that they don't hit each other, but when they're in that exact moment, is it improvised? Or are the things that they're doing is rehearsed? Because the way that Zac Efron reacted, the way that the dad reacted to Zac Efron's performances, it seemed like it was genuine. I was like, yo, why did you do that? Do you get what I'm saying? So that's why I felt like there was a question mark. They should have just told us, this is, like I said, biopics is a full truth. They should have told us, is this all build up to the truth? This is fake. This is rehearsed.
They do address that. He does say the guy went off script when he threw him out of the ring. And that's why he wasn't prepared to take the fall, and that's why he took longer to get up.
Okay, so that means so as a whole, wrestling, majority of wrestling is rehearsed. It's
scripted. So the way they shot it in the movie is they kind of have the milestones, right? So this sequence happens and that sequence happens, and then the actors or the wrestlers know where they need which parts they need to get to, and they have that one scene where before the fight the wrestlers are all standing together and kind of going through the steps, making sure everybody knows what the program is.
But did he answer the question? Because didn't he say in that scene, I wasn't expecting to fall on the ground so hard.
Yeah, because the other guy went off script.
Yeah.
The other guy was supposed to throw him out of the ring.
Also, as someone that has watched wrestling in the past, I know it's meant to be fake and it is all kind of scripted and stuff like that, but they definitely do put their bodies on the line in the ring. I don't know if you've seen some of like the TLC matches, Jeff Hardy jumping off of heights and stuff like that, and obviously when they're taking the chair shots and stuff like that. So there is that potential of having something kind of, like you said, go off script where you might be a little bit more injured than what was planned. If you're working with maybe like a person that's maybe a little bit not inexperienced, but a wrestler that isn't able to take care of you in the ring, essentially. Because like from what I've like heard in interviews and stuff like that, is that, whilst you're, doing the thing, whilst you're in the ring wrestling or whatever like that, the other person's, meant to do moves in a way where obviously it looks real and it looks believable, but they're also meant to take care of you as you're going through some of the different motions, basically.
Well, okay, that's cool. One thing I did like though is they showed obviously the hard work behind being a wrestler and obviously what the body does go through. Obviously you see with Zac Efron and obviously how hard he trained and obviously the impacts, obviously the shots he was taking. Same with obviously the brothers. So I was like, okay, like wrestling isn't just fair. It's actually, they get hurt. They pretty much put their bodies on the line. So that's one thing I did like. But yeah, I just felt like that was an unanswered question for me personally, because with that scene with Zac Efron when he dropped to the ground, I thought he just said, oh, I wasn't expecting for it to hurt that much. That's when I was like, wait, so that was improvised? Wrestling is a whole of wrestling like that. Like they just, they have steps where they improvise on the spot. So that's why, I felt like that was an unanswered question. But you guys have revealed the truth. I see the light.
There's also this other moment where he gets disqualified because he loses control and just keeps pummeling the guy. Like clearly that wasn't planned, but there was a sequence that was supposed to go through, and he just lost control and because of that he got disqualified.
Yeah, but wrestlers get disqualified as well. Like I used to watch wrestling. I was a big fan of SmackDown.
Yeah,
I did not like Raw. I watched Raw, but they were the pagans, and I remember there were a lot of fighters got disqualified, but you could tell it was fake, it was scripted. So that's why when he got disqualified, I was thinking, okay, was he really spazzing out, or was that scripted too? Do you get what I'm saying? So he
was supposed to get the title, and because he lost control, he got disqualified and didn't get it, and that killed his career.
That's very enlightening. What was the highlight moments for you in this film? Wait, hold on. No, sorry. You guys haven't even said your dislikes. Daniel,
dislike is the last two scenes: the afterlife scene. And the scene with Kevin and his sons. The afterlife scene, because it was such a departure from how the rest of the movie worked. I didn't mind it in terms of what it showed. Like it showed them finally being at peace, and that the only way you can get out of this torture that is that family is by dying, right? There's no other way to get out, except Kevin did get out, kind of. But he did it basically by burning down the family. That's kind of the big conclusion to it all, right? But just putting a scene in there that is so allegorical when everything else is literal and supposed to be based on true events, I just don't like it when movies do that. You could have had you could have conveyed the same idea and sentiment in another way that fit in more with the biopic style. And then the last scene I thought the movie overall was really good about communicating, like just telling a story that communicates its ideas. But in the last scene, they just stated at the camera, and that wasn't necessary. Like this whole thing about how Kevin is raising his sons to be different than how his father raised him and his brothers. Nothing wrong with that idea, right? That's how that movie should end. It's just every other scene is very good about showing rather than telling, and there they just told, basically. Those are my two negatives.
That was going to be my highlight scene. Obviously, when you explain it like that, I kind of understand why you dislike it, but I just felt like that was where the emotion was probably the greatest, is that some of that realization and that sort of kind of like that letting go and being able to cry in front of your boys and stuff like that. And obviously him realizing that he's lost all of his brothers, and obviously then it's still being continued through his sons. I thought that was like, an amazing scene. But like
in terms of what it's supposed to do, I'm completely on board with it. Yeah, it's just the movie was better for the rest of it. Yeah. And I really appreciated that. And then in the last scene, they kind of dropped the ball a little bit. Not because it's bad, but because it could have been much better without too much effort.
I actually agree with the scene where the brothers got together. I don't know what scene that was, but it was like a little fantasy or like,
scene, yeah,
the afterlife. So yeah, I actually agree with that because it did kind of feel like out of place. It was like, oh, this is a good idea. We should add it. Forgetting that, this movie
Yeah.
It's, this is pretty much realism to the bone. So that scene kind of felt out of place. But I did really like that Zac Efron scene with his two sons when he realized, oh, all my brothers are gone, and then obviously the sons kind of saying, no, we can be your brothers. I was like, oh man, that was touchy, man.
And it was a really effective conclusion to his character arc of wanting to get away from the family legacy. And that I totally get what they were doing and why they were doing it, and that it's the conclusion to a character arc, and that's all great. It could have been done in a way that just showed him just treating his boys differently than his father treated him.
Mm-hmm.
That would have worked better.
I feel like there's so many highlights in this movie, to be honest. I feel like, again, like you said, where they're like showing and not telling, another example is when the mother has to wear the funeral dress for the second time. And obviously the first time they show her, she's put it on, she's accepting of it, of her child's fate. But then the second time is that she finds it very difficult to put it on. And I just felt that was like another highlight scene where I was like, this is just so well done. This is like, extremely emotional. Just like that. I can't find the word for it. But it's essentially that her in disbelief that it's happening again and her not accepting that it's happening again, basically. I just felt like that was like another highlight scene. And then one more was when Kevin, Zac Efron's character, just stopped going home or, felt that his, boys were better without him because he felt like he was a curse and stuff like that. And you could just kind of feel like the weight of that decision and the difficult choice that he's having to make in that moment where, he probably wants to be in his kid's life, but he can't because, he just feels like everything's going wrong around the family and he feels like he can't be there for them because of that. And I just felt like those were like another two highlights from the movie as well.
Speaking of highlights, speaking of curses, and speaking of superstition, the highlight moment for me was definitely when Zac Efron was strangling the hell out of his father, man. Not because of the violence, but... Yeah. For me, I felt like it had a deeper meaning because when he was strangling him, if he ended up killing him, that would have like cemented the curse, as in it would have cemented the whole superstition that, look, this family's cursed, because that would have ended his life. The dad would have been dead and all the brothers, including him, are dead himself. Even though he would have still alive, but him being in prison would have got a life sentence, he's pretty much dead. But when he let go, that was like he broke the curse. And then it obviously with the ending, how all the families ended up moving in, like the true story, all the families ended up moving in with him. And, there was just so much life. So it was like there was death, he broke the curse, and now there's life. It just all fell into place. Yeah, that scene there was amazing. But that dad was, I was wondering, because with the father, I was like, this guy, I wonder what he's doing now. Because I understand your obsession of, of success and wanting better for your family, but he kind of got lost in the sauce. He got lost in the money to the point where he wasn't given the love and the attention that his kids needed. And especially the ending when obviously Zac just asked him one simple thing: can you look out for the other brother who ended up shooting himself at the end? I was like, you couldn't even do that, and you had the audacity to say he called you. I'm like, oh my God, I need to do my research to see where you are, mate, because you're taking the piss. And also one scene that was interesting. I didn't understand the scene. Either it was okay, so what I think is she was just a broken woman, or was there like a deeper meaning to it? When at the end, when the dad came into the kitchen and he asked the wife, well, what's there? She's hungry. What's there for food? And she was like, she didn't make enough, and she's just painting. Was there like a deeper meaning to that, or just?
Well, that's the end of the family. Like she's checked out of the family. Her entire life has been about investing into her family, and essentially every waking moment was basically pushing her sons along, right, and making sure that they can fulfill their potential. And at that point, she stopped trying, and in her mind, there's no purpose to the family anymore because the sons aren't around anymore, which says a lot about her relationship with the father, right? But
yeah, I was going to say as well, like the kind of like the symbolism behind the painting, because wasn't there that one scene where one of her sons, the one that was like a little bit weaker, the one that like hurt his shoulder, where he was looking at a painting that she'd painted previously, and she could, I think it was like maybe a painting of her old home, and obviously they were saying that this curse went back sort of from like, I think the boys' uncles and stuff like that from back in the day. The way I took it was, she maybe painted that at the time, just to kind of like symbolize, maybe the end of that curse or whatever like that, and then she's got a new family, her boys and stuff like that. And then maybe she rediscovered or went back to painting. And I can't remember if they showed what she was painting.
They didn't show.
No, I'm just assuming she might have been painting their home that they're currently in to maybe symbolize maybe, again, the end of the family curse, or maybe just to symbolize, or like a callback to that previous painting or something like that. That's kind of how I took that scene.
That's a slightly different interpretation of it. So so throughout the movie, they say quite clearly that both parents gave up all their passions in order to put all their emphasis on their sons. So the mother gave up painting, and we don't know if she ever had a career or anything like that. Maybe not, but at least she gave up her other interests, right? And the father gave up football and music. And
it wasn't wrestling, because he was meant to have a title shot and he never got his.
He started out as a football player, got into that, then got into wrestling. And when he was young, he also was into music. He gave that up to the point where his sons don't even believe that he's.
You got a scholarship for music, didn't you?
Sorry?
It was a scholarship. You received a scholarship for music.
Yeah, so he was really good at it as well. So and he gave that up for wrestling.
No, it was for football, I believe. So he had a music scholarship and football.
But point is, both of them gave up all their passions in order to embark on this family project, on this intergenerational family project. And when that is over, because they have run the entire family into the ground and all their children are dead or estranged, that's when she picks up painting again, because now she has nothing else to live for but herself, and so she picks up her old passions. And the father can't do that, right? He's completely consumed by the loss and the failure, because he's so competitive and so single-minded that it just destroys him. But for her, the painting symbolizes essentially being focused on herself for the first time in decades.
Okay, yeah.
Good point.
I can see it that way. I can't remember the full context behind the first time that she showed him the painting.
The son just looks at the painting on the wall, and she's never told anybody that she used to paint. And he just asked, "Hey, what's that painting?" And he said, "Well, I never told anybody this, but this is the home I grew up in, and I used to paint a lot. But then I met your father, and so on."
Yeah.
Well, this was a really good movie, man. It was a good movie. And I think, like I mentioned before, the performances was definitely the highlights. It's definitely the highlight of the film. So for you guys, who would you say your favorite performance was?
I liked I forget his name. The one that ended up actually winning the title and then went on the motorbike and lost his leg.
Oh, the brother. I don't know his name, but I know you're talking about the brother. Call him brother with the long hair.
Kerry, the second son, I think.
Kerry, yeah. I really felt his pain a lot, because obviously, he survived the motorcycle accident, and all of the boys were living their father's dream, but it seems like he was probably the one that the father held to the highest esteem and stuff like that. And then just having to deal with the disappointment. Actually, another very, very good scene was that the father was chasing this whole dream of like the heavyweight title and bringing that to the family and stuff like that. And I just loved how empty the house felt when he'd won it and he just had the belt on the table. It felt completely empty. He was drinking. It was just like, you can put so much emphasis on these goals and sort of what you want to achieve and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, what does it really matter? It's just a material possession. It's just like a title web like that. You've lost your brother. It's not the same feeling or you have a different feeling than you would have had if you hadn't lost your brother. And that's probably the most important thing in that situation. So that's another highlight of the movie. But no, I loved his performance. I loved sort of when he was trying to make his comeback after sort of he'd lost his leg. Trying to get back in the ring. Trying to still sort of almost like still seeking that validation, that approval of sort of wanting to, have some type of worth, essentially. So yeah, I feel it was a very, my strongest performance in the movie.
Yeah, I think that the performances were all strong. Like they all really sold their characters and made you feel for them. But I think Zac Efron, just steals the show. I think there's also more emphasis on him than on others. Yeah. But that also means he has to deliver, and he does deliver. Like I really cared for this guy, and there's really nothing for me to latch onto in terms of empathizing with him. Right? I don't come from that kind of family. I don't, I'm not into sports in that way. I'm not competitive or anything like that. So there's not a lot for me to, not a lot of common ground with him. But I still was with him all along the way.
I agreed 100%. Like Zac Efron, even though he was the main actor, his performance was amazing. I think he was just like a walking contradiction, and he did that so well. Like he was a big guy that was soft. He was a guy that was trying to win his dad's approval, but at the same time didn't agree with his methods on how he was, like for example, treating his other brothers. Even with his wrestling career, you could tell that he wanted it, but he didn't want it. So he wants it for his dad's approval, but at the same time, he started to realize that, I would rather just have, I think there was a scene where he was talking with his brothers, I'd just rather have just look after my family, have a family, and look after my family. So like the concept of being a walking contradiction, he definitely executed that very, very well. And I'm just surprised, man, that I haven't really seen too much of Zac Efron. I haven't really watched much of his movies. Like I said, probably, I don't know when the last thing I probably saw of him. I'm not going to say High School Musical because I think it was High School Musical. Maybe it was something else. But yeah, so what I remember him off is, High School Musical. But seeing him today, seeing his performance today, I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to check out some of Zac Efron's movies because, boy, this guy can act. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
And non-verbal acting too.
Mm.
I think there's multiple scenes where he just sits in a locker room and is just tired and doesn't know what he should do or can do or has these existential doubts, and there's not a single person to talk to. And all of that is communicated without a single word. Really good.
And it felt like he was growing up, even though he was growing up, but like he was growing up in terms of what he wanted. The way that he executed it as well. Yeah, man, this movie was really well put together. Really well put together.
So I've got a negative as well, or a potential negative. It's kind of debatable. Should the family have been more abusive? Because I know families that are that kind of demanding and that have that kind of parenting style. Not quite that extreme, but growing up, I had friends who were in families like that. And one thing that I thought was kind of missing was that they didn't seem afraid of the parents, especially the father. Mm-hmm. And knowing people who come from families with that kind of competitive attitude, the idea of disappointing your parents is terrifying, like existentially. And not because of you think you'll be punished, but just your purpose is to impress your parents and get the approval of your parents and meet their expectations. And when you fail to, then life has lost its purpose. And that kind of was missing. Like I thought, at least, or it should have been stronger. What do you think?
You know what? I think they shouldn't have been more abusive. And the reason why I think they shouldn't have been more abusive, because of the fear. I think it was because of the curse and the fear of death. Because they already had brother who died, right? So that kind of set off the tone, especially adding on to that was with this whole curse, how the family's cursed. I think the fear of that, they probably thought, okay, me disappointing my family could kind of like fall into that in a way, like the consequences could potentially be death, if that makes sense. I think like the fear of death in itself, because of the curse, the fear of death in itself is what kind of like terrified them more and kind of like fell into the whole, not disappointing our parents, because obviously they firmly believe in this curse as well. So it's like, if they firmly believe in it and they're my parents, so the fear of disappointment.
I think only Kevin believes in the curse, right? Or it's not even clear if he literally believes in it or if it's more metaphorical. But do the brothers ever mention it?
I don't think they do.
I think they soon fall into this curse. So like, especially with Zac and the other brother who ends up offing himself at the end. In terms of the younger one who died in the forest, I think he soon started to believe it, especially after he woke up from the coma.
But that was more along the lines of, I can never be a full member of this family again because I can't perform.
I feel like, just to kind of go back to your question, Daniel, I think in one of the scenes they talk about his dad having like favorites, and obviously, when one's performing a little bit better than the other, then that, maybe bumps him up. I think he actually makes a joke of it of like, if you improve, then you can, maybe bump up to my first favorite or whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's maybe under explored in terms of like when you're talking about the abusive side of things and stuff like that, in terms of like how we maybe would have treated some of the ones, especially the younger one that was more into music and should never have been in the ring because he was, it was never his destiny. You can tell it was never his destiny. But him being completely different to what, his brothers were like, I feel like they probably could have maybe shown that a little bit more in terms of like maybe the father being a little bit more dismissive, less interested in like, what he was doing and stuff like that, because it's not aligned with the father's interest of wrestling and stuff like that. I feel like that was maybe not shown as well in the movie.
And because it's a biopic, maybe that wasn't how that family worked. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seems strange that like there should be a visceral fear for anybody who grows up in that kind of environment.
Yeah. Because if you think about, and that's actually maybe another question, is that, was the father that wrong? Because we've seen examples of this in many different instances. So, you had people like David Beckham, who had his father was extremely tough on him. No matter how well he did on the football pitch, his father would always tell him, it's not enough, you need to do better, this and the other. Of course, you've got the famous Michael Jackson's father as well, which was very strict, very, disciplined, very one-minded in terms of like what they should be doing in life and this and the other. And it's just like, can you understand the father, or can you maybe sympathize with the father at all? Or can you maybe understand his point of view, and maybe is that level of parenting needed to create these mega superstars? Because you've seen examples of it work in other places.
It kind of brings up the philosophical question of what parents are for, right? Like, what's your job as a parent?
Yeah.
And if you take the view that children are the extensions of their parents, and like the family is the unit that succeeds or fails, and everybody else, every member of the family contributes to that, then the parents are probably more justified. But if you take the idea that parents are supposed to enable their children to be functioning and thriving adults, then no, they're complete failures. Like the youngest brother, is it Mike? He should have been nurtured to be a musician. And he could have made the family very proud as a successful musician. And instead he ended up in the woods with a bullet in his head because he didn't fit the template, or his skills didn't match the expectations and ambitions of his parents. So in that sense, the brother with the ruptured intestines, that wasn't the fault of the parents, other than pushing them too far and not having people not looking out for each other. And the motorcycle accident, that wasn't directly their fault. It was kind of indirectly, and because they created this environment. I think the brother that ended up in the coma, I think that is pretty much directly their fault, because they pushed him into something he shouldn't have been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I definitely see where the dad was coming from, and you can sympathize with him because obviously he just wants a better life for his kids.
But he does he really? I mean, he really wants them to achieve his dreams, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. But it is his fault because he's very single-minded, and it's like he's trying to still succeed at his failures, but through his kids, no matter what the cost is. And obviously the cost is their lives.
He doesn't want them to succeed at their dreams. He wants them to succeed
in his yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, literally. He wants them to succeed in his dreams at any cost, and the cost is their lives. I don't think he should be more abusive. I just honestly, I believe that, he was just being selfish, man, without him realizing, thinking he was doing the right thing. But
so when I asked if the parents should have been more abusive, I meant that should the movie have done more to portray them as abusive?
Oh, okay.
To make the point better.
I do feel like there was like a subtleness again to it, in terms of like how obedient the sons were to their father. It was like basically he said something and it went, mainly no questions asked. It was like Kerry wasn't able to go to the Olympics because America weren't sending any athletes to the Olympics that particular year, and it was like, okay, you're gonna come back and you're gonna do wrestling, and it was just like no questions asked. And I feel like that's maybe like what households again used to be like in that period of time where what the father said basically went no questions asked. You didn't have the room to have your own opinions in that place. But again, it probably could have been shown a little bit more explicitly.
And it's also, if you want to comment on that kind of environment, then you kind of have to show it in its entirety, right? And I think that is really an important part of it, that the children really internalize that kind of pressure and those expectations. And it's not just about the parents making them do certain things. It's completely baked into their worldview and self-image. So as long as they keep winning, everything is great. But if they struggle, or if they fail at something, then they've not only disappointed themselves, but let their parents down. And that kind of environment that's the worst thing you can do. Yeah. And that was kind of missing. Like nobody was ever afraid of the parents. Like they obeyed when he gave an instruction, but they weren't hiding failures, or they weren't dreading, telling him about something. As far as
there was like no repercussion. Obviously, they snuck their brother out to go perform at the university, and there wasn't really any like repercussions to that. There wasn't any after effects of them doing that in terms of like having the fear.
And that's kind of where I wonder, is that because of that's what the family was like, or is that just a script issue? And I think this movie already takes pretty significant liberties with the source material. I don't think in the real world that those two halves of the movie line up that neatly. I haven't done any research into it, but at least the Wikipedia page basically says that they shuffled some stuff around to have a more clear narrative structure. And I wonder if the way they portrayed that family is based on the facts, or based on what they wanted use to make the point.
Yeah.
And it's a shame too, because it's a lot of the discourse has been around things like toxic masculinity and stuff like that. But I think while that's in the movie, and that's certainly what the movie focuses on in its last scene, right, with Kevin and his sons. In terms of the overall movie, this whole thing of the tiger parenting is a much bigger theme, like that children are treated as the extensions of their parents and their ambitions, and that is really they're not that repressed emotion. Like they are, but that's not what drives the plot. What drives the plot is that they have a plan laid out for them from birth, and they have to follow it, and their self-image and their recognition and acceptance from their parents comes from achieving those goals that have been set for them, as opposed to realizing their own dreams and potential.
I'm glad you liked it, Daniel.
Yeah. I'm surprised. I didn't expect it to, and I didn't expect it until about the halfway mark. I think when the second brother dies, that's where I said, "Oh, that's what happened. That's what's happening." Okay, and then I saw kind of retroactively saw what the movie was doing, really, and like it was setting up all of these pieces, like setting up every brother to fail one by one in increasingly gruesome ways and tragic ways. And maybe that's not the most realistic, because real life, if it's a biopic, it's supposed to be about real life, and real life is never that neat. But it makes a really compelling story, because by the third or fourth time, you're kind of tired, and you kind of empathize with the surviving family members who just keep, and I think that's why the scene with the mother at the second funeral works out so well, is because you are also exhausted at that point as much as she is. You're really dreading the next scene, because you know something else, like we've still got 3 brothers to go, kind of thing. And
when you don't know the backstory, you don't know what's then like next to come. Essentially, like they're setting it's a trend basically, and you're not.
I was fully expecting Kevin to die or have some other tragedy, and the fact that it's kind of a happy ending for him, as much as circumstances allow, was actually a subversion of my expectations. Because at that point, I was expecting him to just be destroyed by the whole thing.
I thought he was going to kill his dad, to be honest.
Ends up in prison because he snaps or something.
Yeah.
Like I said, man, that was him breaking the curse. Him letting go.
I think you're taking that curse thing too literally. I think that's just him basically saying there's no escaping from this. Like, this is one person having made a mistake. This is just how this family works, and you don't leave the family. And the worst thing you can do is bring somebody into that environment.
No, but that's how they viewed the curse, though. Me personally, I don't believe in none of that curse. But the way that obviously, Kevin was talking about this curse, it's like he genuinely believed that this family was cursed, especially which caused it. So remember when he obviously didn't go home, because obviously he thought that
he came from the kids as well.
Exactly. So
he's afraid he will become his father.
Yeah, he doesn't. I don't think so, because he doesn't. I remember even the scene when he finds out his brother's in a coma and he's on the phone to his wife, and then his wife is reassuring him like, "This is not your fault. This is your dad's." So I don't think like he believed that he was saying into his father.
He doesn't believe her. He doesn't accept her argument.
No, it's not that he doesn't accept her, because I think even after she said that, he didn't say nothing. It was just the look in his face when he was looking. I think I don't know if the dad was there, but the look in his face was like he was contemplating it. And I was like, that's when I saw that sense of, okay, it's starting to finally sink into him now.
I was gonna say that the family's cursed. I feel like he's seeing a pattern of like things happening and stuff like that. Of bad things happening to the Von Erich family, and obviously at one point it was mentioned as a bit of a joke, but then you start to see him starting to believe it. Yeah, it keeps coming up. He's starting to believe it and stuff like that, which is why I believe when he's like when he's changing the surname of the son, and his wife's like, "Are you sure? Like, it's not real." It's like, no, he really believes it, and he doesn't want the kids to inherit the curse.
I think that was clearly a coping mechanism. What he really wants is to get his sons out of this family, and this is like the only agency he has in that sense. Because he can't just pack up and leave, because his entire life is entangled with that family and the family business and so on. He doesn't have a life outside of the family, right? And the best he can do is keep his sons away from that. And I think the surname thing was symbolic of that, where he basically I can't actually give them the life they need, but at least I can put some distance between them and the family.
Especially when he obviously let go of the dad. That was like him letting go from the dad as well, and obviously all his expectations as well as the relationship. So yeah, man. Also
talking about taking liberties, I did read that he had 2 daughters before he had 2 sons, but I understand why they did it in the movie.
Why did they show the daughters?
Yeah, like I read up, he had like 2 daughters, but they thought obviously it's going to be a lot more impactful. It's a story about like these brothers and stuff like that. So they showed him having two sons as opposed to having two daughters first.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I imagine that streamlined the narrative as well.
Yeah.
That would have cluttered it up a little bit if there had been more children around.
Well, guys, last thoughts.
I'm glad I watched it. I don't think I'll watch it again. But yeah, if I would recommend this to anybody who can get interested in that subject matter, or who can get over the subject matter rather. Like I'm still not interested in wrestling. I'm still not interested in sports movies. But this isn't really one. Like this isn't really about the wrestling. This is all about that kind of family environment where parents live vicariously through their children in the most tragic way, because it ends up killing all of them or most of them. And that is a really compelling story. And I think the wrestling angle actually kind of distracts from that. Like that's what happened. That was the milieu that was in. But it's not really about wrestling.
Would you rate it?
5 out of 6.5 maybe.
Your rating is a 6.
Really good, not perfect, but really good.
Yeah.
Like this deserves all the awards in my opinion, just as a drama.
Yeah, I think final verdict or final rating from me, I can't say much more than what Daniel said there. Yeah, he summed it up perfectly. So my rating, I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10.
Well, for me, I think this is definitely worth the watch. They conveyed very well how a functional family on paper can be so dysfunctional. Yeah, man, definitely bring your tissues for this one. And well done to the cast, well done to Zac Efron. You definitely deserve an award for this one. And I'd give this film an 8. I would watch it again though, but it's a commendable film. It's an 8. Yeah, guys, thank you for tuning in today. Next week we'll be reviewing Madam Web, I believe, which is going to be a very interesting one. If you guys have seen reviews on that film already, it's going to be very interesting. I wish it. Okay, you know what? That's for a conversation for another day. But I hope it doesn't flop. But we'll see. But yeah, man. Hervé, do you wanna plug in?
Well, should we maybe talk about our expectations for that? Because I think this is one where expectations are really important to the experience.
All right. If you want to give your expectations, let's go.
I mean, they don't really have high expectations for this movie themselves. They put out one trailer for this movie. That trailer got absolutely trashed, and they decided not to market this movie much more than that afterwards, apart from maybe like a few like trailers here and there that I saw on YouTube. And of course, they lifted the review embargo about a day before the movie was coming out. So
like 7 p.m. the day before premiere or something. Yeah, so they have absolutely no faith in this movie. I'm sure that they're probably not expecting it to make any movie. I'll save my thoughts on the whole like Sony stuff for next week when we actually discuss Madam Web, because at this point I feel like I'm over what Sony's trying to do with the Spider-Verse. Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, I gave my thoughts on Morbius a couple of episodes ago, and the bottom line of that is I think that's a movie where the public, like the consensus opinion is pretty much unrelated to the movie itself. I don't think it's a great movie, but it works and it has some interesting ideas in it, and it doesn't deserve the scathing opinions that it gets. And I'm seeing the same bandwagon effect with Madam Web. Now, I don't believe it's actually going to be a good movie. Like reviews are not positive. Like even the most positive reviews straight after premiere are already pretty negative, but not in an interesting way. Apparently it's just kind of there. It's just a completely people already said who cares about Morbius? Why make a Morbius movie? But when I actually think on paper, at least Morbius is actually kind of a decent idea. It's it's a vampire story. It's what a scientist who turns himself into a monster. Like there's stuff there you can make a movie out of. With Madam Web, the character is already really obscure, even more so than the others that they're making movies about as a supporting character for Spider-Man. And then not only are they making a Madam Web movie without Spider-Man, they're also changing every aspect of her as a character. And that is really, not only is the question, why would you make a Madam Web movie, but why would you make a Madam Web movie in which you've changed every aspect of her character from the source material? And you either do that when you have a great plan or when you have no plan at all. And currently there's no indication whatsoever that they actually have a plan for this. And I don't even understand why they made it, because if it's about keeping the rights, I don't think they need to make this many movies. Normally when somebody makes movies to keep rights or to retain rights, that's one every 2 years or 3 years or something like that. And they're making 3 this year. So something's going on, right? Like that's it's not as simple as, well, they want to keep the rights, so they make random movies that they expect to lose money. And even then, why make a Madame Web movie before Craven or before any of the other Spider-Man characters they have access to? Why are they not making a Sinister Six movie? All of these questions, considering my experience with Morbius, I'm kind of expecting this to be my favorite movie of the year, probably just based on the odds. But there's just no indication whatsoever. And I think the movie has been out for a day now, and there should have been some indication if there was anything to it. But even if it's just a trash movie they made just to make it, it's still weird. It still doesn't add up. We'll know next week.
I did see a comment that said that the worst thing to happen to Sony was Venom being a success, because it made them believe that they can make all these Spider-Man sort of side character spin-off movies without Spider-Man and it be a success. And it's almost like they're trying to chase that success of Venom and they're getting nowhere close to it.
But even then, they're not really doing it in a comprehensible way. So they've shown that you can do Venom without Spider-Man, right? You just change the costume a bit and you change the origin a little bit, but the character is fairly close to the original. I've seen comments from some people who are really into comics Venom and who say this is not the same character, but just to a casual audience, this is pretty close as you get without having Spider-Man as part of the motivation, which is really important to comics Venom, right? And then, like I said, I think Morbius has potential, and Craven is kind of like a big game hunter, like an Amora big game hunter that operates in the superhero universe in which those kinds of things, you can see kind of what the story idea is, right? So I think you're right. I think that made them overly confident, but then there's still like 27 better choices than Men in Web, based on who they have the rights to.
And back to another point that you mentioned as well, I feel like that's another problem with modern writing, is that a lot of people disrespect the source material, or they don't appreciate the source material and feel like they can do better. And I feel like I've mentioned this previously on the channel, and it's just, if you don't care enough about what was laid before, if you don't care about enough about what was worked before, then just don't touch the project. Go and work on something else, or go and create your own idea. Go and make up your own thing. Like, don't take what people enjoy and what people like and then I shouldn't swear, but bastardize it and just make it whatever, essentially.
Yeah.
So have a little bit of respect of sort of what people have worked on before.
It's kind of a strange thing where the whole point of adapting a character like this is so you have an inbuilt audience, right? So the character comes pre-packaged with fans. So the whole point of doing a character like this is that it comes pre-packaged with an audience, with a fan base, right? But then you do everything in your power to alienate those fans by changing the character into something else that's unrelated. So that's I've never understood that. Now, in the case of Madame Web, there's probably maybe 3 people who are really passionate about Madame Web as a character, but every change they've made based on the trailer and on the posters and whatever, I still would prefer to see the original version, because that version is much more interesting, and they've made just every change they've made seem to make this character more generic and less interesting. So even on that level, it doesn't really work. I think you can. So in general, I'm completely with you. If you're going to adapt something, it should at least stay true to the spirit, and any changes you make should be just for practical reasons.
Also, because I'm sure there's been adaptations which James Gunn has made to some of the characters that he's worked with for the Marvel and some of the Suicide Squad and stuff like that. Just make it a little bit more interesting.
It's the classical example in Suicide Squad, Polka Dot Man.
Polka Dot Man, yeah.
Right, there's maybe 5 people that are upset that Polka Dot Man was changed. And, I'm not saying those people don't matter, but I'm just saying the number of people who were previously invested in the backstory of Polka Dot Man and his power set and everything is probably really tiny. But then the change they made actually made him more interesting. And he's like the standout character in the Suicide Squad. So, but I'm not seeing that with Madame Web either, right? But there's nothing where I say, okay, the character, the original character is maybe a bit lame or whatever, but we take this basic idea, distill it down, and build it up into something new that's different but compelling on its own right. That is also missing, right? And that's the baffling thing, right? If you made this movie about, I don't know a lot about the original character. I think I watched the Spider-Man animated series about 70 years ago or something, and I just vaguely remember her being this mysterious interdimensional being that kind of manipulates everybody for her own ends, but is largely on Spider-Man's side, or at least wants to see him succeed. But you never really know what her motives are, and then stuff like that. That's all really cool and compelling, and you could make a really interesting movie about that, about somebody kind of sits in between, the multiverse and kind of manipulates people in different realities in order for some bigger cosmic plan or whatever. It's maybe more difficult to write, but it would be interesting, and it would get more attention and more goodwill than whatever this is.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I would say I can't wait to come next week and discuss the best movie of the year, Madam Web.
Yeah, I mean, based on past experience, that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But the way that this film's been described as such a bad movie, it makes me think that it has to be good then, because it can't be this terrible.
It's just average. It's just kind of there. Like nobody's talking about how terrible it is or how eccentric it is or whatever. They're talking about how average it is. Like, there's just a complete lack of ideas, apparently, according to those reviews. That's completely consistent with the impression that the first trailer left, right? It feels like a TV episode from a low-budget superhero show from 2007.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
Why is the big question? And I really hope that there's some idea that's in there that's buried that people just didn't see, but I'm not keeping my hopes up.
This makes me want to go and watch Batwoman.
Yeah, that's a whole separate topic. I mean, I think it's entirely possible that the movie really was that bad and that really would have damaged the brand and they were really better off not releasing it. But yeah, we'll never know. And in the absence of that, people can speculate and read into it.
Well, guys, thank you for watching. See you next week.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Ciao.